The NBA draft is in 3 days. There's lots of buzz, lots of noise about what all these teams could do. Let's talk about all the latest rumors and buzz around the Pacers, trades they could make, moves that could be made, and I will talk about my big board and how it could relate to the Pacers on draft night. We'll break it all down today.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the Pacers for Forbes and the West Side Community News, entering my 6th season on the beat. And today, we're talking NBA draft, breaking down the latest buzz about the Pacers, some rumors from some of the plugged-in insiders on the league, what it could mean for what's coming for the Pacers on Thursday night, only 3 days from the draft. Then we'll also talk big board at the end. I finally ranked players. I don't think there'll be any more movement. There's not much else I can learn about these guys. I've now interviewed all the relevant people for my exercises. So I think I'm set there, and I'll talk about if the Pacers should be similar or different to the way I have ranked the players. At the end, it's draft week. There's going to be lots of draft coverage here on Locked On Pacers. Please subscribe. You don't want to miss it. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And thanks for making me your first listen every day and hanging out. Let's talk buzz. I've split this up into 2 groups. The first one is vet trades that could include a draft pick or draft return for the Pacers. And the second part is moving in the draft, whether that's moving up in the first round, moving into the first round, whatever that could look like. There's been reports from various insiders saying various things. We're going to cut through it all today. We'll start with the vets because this has now come from 2 different, very plugged-in people on the transaction front. The Pacers' potential moves for guys, and some of this is they have optionality, right? The Pacers, the 2 players, before I get ahead of myself, are Myles Turner and Malcolm Brogdon. And the Pacers, because they are part retooling and part rebuilding, and they could have cap space, they could be over the cap. You know, as Kevin Pritchard said after the trade deadline, the Pacers are a boat and a ship, and they can easily change directions in the water and go whatever way they want. And they should already know what direction they would like to head, but having the optionality of potentially retooling and being a little better or rebuilding and being a little worse this next season lets them be kind of towing the line. And that's why you've heard murmurs about extensions for Turner, while also hearing what the latest buzz is. So first from Jake Fisher, last week a little buzz where he said rival teams are once again monitoring the Indiana Pacers' potential to jettison veteran talent. He said the Pacers have resumed trade conversations about Myles Turner ahead of the draft. In addition, engaging opposing front offices on point guard Malcolm Brogdon. Those 2 names have been floated forever as potential Pacers trade pieces. Myles Turner, every cycle of NBA transactions, trade deadline, free agency, even in the basically December 15th, once trade buzz starts during the regular season, Myles Turner's name pops up. This is not new. He even lists the Hornets as an interested team, which has been the case since 2018, maybe was the first time I heard that, 2019. And the Hornets have had some interest in Turner with the Kupchak front office down there for a long time, right? So Fisher mentions that specifically. Does not connect this as a trade per se, but also says the Hornets have communicated it all around the league. A willingness to move the number 15 pick. There could be some value there for the Pacers, probably a little more they would want than the 15th pick specifically. But not a bad trade idea for the Pacers if they're going to be moving Turner. And then we get from Shams today in The Athletic, in his bombshell piece, mostly about Kyrie Irving. He does his inside pass where he cuts through some teams. He said the Pacers are seriously discussing trades centered on Malcolm Brogdon and Myles Turner. The Wizards and Knicks are interested in Brogdon. Those teams have picks 10 and 11 in the lottery. And then said the same thing as Fisher. The Hornets have expressed interest in Turner. The same sources tell him. So there we go. Those are the same things that have been noted for forever and ever about the Pacers, but they're more concrete now with the draft heating up. And for the Pacers, this timing, those 2 players, they make the most sense for the following reason. One, for Brogdon's case, he overlaps with Halliburton in the point guard spot, and while they can play well together, Brogdon is 29, going on 30, 3 years left on his deal. It's fine. His contract is fine, but he's missed a lot of time. If the Pacers want to be younger or exchange him for even a different player who makes a similar amount of money, that'd be a better fit on their roster given what Halliburton is. So yes, he is a talent. Malcolm Brogdon's very good. At times I argued he was the best player on their team in some of the last couple seasons when he was able to play and be healthy. But given his timeline and his age and his value, his somewhat high value around the league, I would put his value, at least in conversations I've had, just slightly higher than Karis LeVert's was last season. Brogdon misses a lot of time. That I think his value is lower than some people kind of perceive it to be, but it is still a little higher than LeVert's was when they traded him at the deadline this past season. And so it could, 10 and 11 might be like the high end of what I think the Pacers could get for Brogdon, but if they could, that would make a lot of sense for them to do. And I think trading Brogdon makes a lot of sense for a team that, is not necessarily going towards adding vets and acquiring talent for a playoff push. Right now, Brogdon is better suited on a contending squad, though he does make sense on the Pacers if they are trying to be good next year, trying to win some games, recover from their third worst season in franchise history. It would have made sense to me if the Pacers said, yes, we would like to keep him. He is very good. We think he can truly fit with Tyrese Haliburton. But it also would make sense to me for them to say, this is our new franchise cornerstone. We got him from the Kings. We love him. Malcolm, I'm sorry, but that means your time with our franchise is up. So that rumor makes a ton of sense, if they can. And it makes a lot of sense, especially for a team like New York, who was the 4th seed 2 seasons ago and then just terrible bottom out this past season, to go get a point. Derrick Rose is always hurt. Kemba Walker was not who they needed him to be. They need point guard help pretty badly. They've been kind of linked to Brunson, out there. But if they can get Brogdon, and it's worth them trading their pick to do that, all of a sudden they're armed with R.J. Barrett about to ascend, Brogdon, Randall, Rose, Fournier, all the vets they've had in years past. They still have, again, R.J. Barrett's young and talented, Quickly's young and talented, Toppin's young and talented. Perhaps they'd be willing to do that. They'd have a nice balance of young and old to kind of drift into the future. Same with Washington. They can build around Beal, finally get another point guard back. The best season they had with Beal was with Wall and Beal killing it. Those would seem to be good fits for Brogdon. 2 point guard needy teams, kind of in the late lottery. That would make sense as pursuits for him as the draft kind of approaches. So I think it does make sense for the Pacers, Brogdon more so than any other player, because he's their most valuable veteran. If the Pacers are going to retool and get other pieces, he seems like the guy that makes the most sense, because New Orleans at 8, Portland at 7. Yeah, maybe they want point guards, but those picks are probably worth too much for Brogdon. And then you have, OKC at 12. They don't need a guy like Brogdon. Cavs at 14, and the Hornets have 13 and 15. Those teams have their guards. And then all of a sudden you're outside the lottery. You're at pick values that maybe aren't quite enough for Brogdon. So that sweet spot is kind of where Washington and New York are. Perhaps there's a deal to be had there. Turner, he's kind of been my litmus test for what the Pacers are thinking this summer. He's 26. You could call him in the young group. You could also call him in the veteran group. And he gets trade buzz every single time. Like I said, that there is opportunity for trades and moves to happen. If the Pacers can get 15 and something else from Charlotte for him, that would make a lot of sense. The Hornets have wanted him, and quite frankly, a defensive center for a long time. Pacers are finally in a spot where having a younger center maybe makes some sense. But at the same time, he is a younger center. He's only 26. So that one is interesting because there are extension talks as well. Perhaps the Pacers have determined that they can't agree to an extension with Turner. Maybe they still want to see him with Haliburton. I'm not as sold on him getting traded as being like as solid of a thing as Brogdon necessarily. But I do think that the Pacers are talking about basically every veteran on their team about what their value could be or what deals they could have. So yeah, the Hornets make a lot of sense in that value range. Getting 13 would be the dream for the Pacers, of course, another lottery pick. But the Hornets having 13 and 15, and like PJ Washington, some other interesting young pieces, James Bouknight, Kai Jones. They have a lot of interesting stuff to make something happen. Matching salaries could be a little tough for those two teams, but there are ways to make that happen. Even the Knicks have had interest in Turner in the past, but 11's a little too rich there. And as you drop down, it becomes a little harder to find the perfect fit for Turner. Minnesota had interest in the past. They're at 19. It might take a little more than that. San Antonio maybe at 20. So there are fits for Turner as well if the Pacers are looking to trade these guys for draft picks. Now, but that isn't even necessarily floated concretely. Shams and Jake Fisher do a really good job of this. And I think every NBA insider does a good job of this. Here's a player that they have heard is available. The two Pacers vets I just said. And here are teams that are interested in them. And then they say separately, and this is smart, this is correct, those teams have this pick, but they never connect and say, this pick for this player is something that's been talked about. It should be always noted when this stuff is talked about that these are separate things intentionally, because you never know what sort of discussions teams are having. Like any team could have interest in Brogdon or Turner, and any team has any number of draft picks. But given the way the reporting has gone for years and years, given these teams' interest in Turner and Brogdon, and given the valuations I've heard for those guys, those connections that do make sense potentially for the Pacers going forward. So those are the first rumors. Myles Turner and Brogdon are the two guys that have been named the most, and now by two different insiders in about a 4-day stretch. And I'll be fascinated to see how that shakes out, because if the Pacers are going to dramatically change their team on draft night or early in free agency, those two guys seem like the dominoes that will start to kind of snowball things. And the 6th pick is also a domino, of course. But those two vets seem like big ones. So let's talk about intra-draft trades. The Pacers moving up or down or really into the first round again. What those reports have looked like, what could make sense for deals in that vein, because that's another way for the Pacers to get some young talent and jumpstart their rebuild around guys like Chris Duarte and Tyrese Halliburton. Before we do that, though, I would really quick like to talk to you guys about PrizePicks. Are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. It's super easy to use. What you do, you hop on there, you pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections for a game or a matchup or whatever, and you can win 10 times any entry you do. It's just you versus those projected numbers. You can make the entries in 60 seconds or less. It's super easy. PrizePicks is safe. They offer fast withdrawals, and their app has been award-winning on the App Store and Google Play. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of: points scored, rebounds, and steals. With basketball, all the baseball stats are there as it's in full swing. Hockey, with the Stanley Cup Finals going on, and you can do mixed sport entries. So matching all those together, they've got NBA, they've got college hoops, college football, NFL, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. They got everything. Go try it yourself. PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our listeners. You can win $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right, exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today. Use code NBA when you sign up. You'll get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, why not hop on over to our Locked On Ultimate Mock Draft? I made a big trade in that very recently, talking about the Pacers. Locked On Insiders break down all the deals. You can learn more about all the prospects, all the considerations for every team in the Locked On Ultimate Mock Draft and NBA Draft Night. Let's go back to talking about rumors, but this time, instead of talking about vets and what the Pacers could do there, talk about some rumored kind of intra-draft things that have been discussed for the Pacers in this cycle. We'll start with Woj this time, who during NBA Countdown before, I think it was Game 6, it might have been Game 5 of the NBA Finals, was talking about Jaden Ivey and the Kings' options with the 4th overall pick in this draft. And he reported a ton of teams are interested in moving up to get that 4th pick. Detroit at 5, Indiana at 6. He mentioned them both specifically. The Knicks at 10, the Knicks at 11, the Wizards at 10. He also said there's some teams outside the lottery with interest. So, Jaden Ivey, very popular player. And that's why this draft lottery is so important. It was a 4-player draft, 4 picks get drawn. The Kings were the lucky winners who either can pick Ivy or take the ransom, or they could pick Keegan Murray if they love him as much as it has been reported they do. So that's the first time anyone's reported the Pacers' interest in moving up. And I think it just naturally makes sense. I have discussed this on this podcast multiple times. If you're the Pacers, you do not pick with a single-digit pick very often. In fact, if you're younger than 32 years old, they have never done it in your life. This is a rare opportunity for the Pacers, and it is imperative to me that they get the absolute best player they can. And so after that 4th pick, there's a big drop-off. And then maybe for the Pacers, you say, well, we can't get a star. Let's pick someone safe so we know we're getting the best possible player in this rare circumstance. But if you can get up to 4 and know you're getting a safer, air quotes, really studly talent, I think you have to try to do that. I tried to trade for Ivy and succeeded in our ultimate mock draft that I just mentioned at the beginning of this segment. I gave up a ton. Reddit people have roasted me for it. But I thought it was a good deal because I think Ivy is that good. I think Jaden Ivey is that good, and I get why the Pacers would be all over this. And I'll tell you where I have Jaden Ivey on my big board in the 3rd segment here. But anyway, that is the first rumor that has been had about the Pacers potentially moving up that high. I think it would take quite a bit to do it, and Woj even said it would take a significant asking price from the Kings, as it should. If a bunch of teams want their pick and they have a potential to get the last guy in kind of the upper echelon tier that has been reported on by all these insiders and draft experts, yes, the Pacers should absolutely, the Kings should absolutely hold teams over a barrel to try to get it. And the Pacers, it might be hard to do, but if they want to do it, they should try to do it. We'll see what actually ends up happening there. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Pacers to do it, but I get why if you're the Kings, you'd say, no way, we are not interested in making such a trade. But that's the first time it's been connected, and I get why the Pacers would be aggressive in moving up in that way. This is a rare opportunity for them. If they can give up 6 and other stuff to get 4, I think they absolutely have to consider it. And of course, Woj knows it all here. The other intra-draft trade report that we've heard from insiders leading up to this draft comes from Jake Fisher again, this time not talking about vets the Pacers can move. Fisher says the Pacers also have designs on acquiring an additional first-round pick besides their number 6 selection. His sources have told him Indiana is exploring options to trade the number 31 pick, the first pick of the second round, plus the Cleveland Cavaliers 2023 first-round pick, which is part of the Pacers' original return for LeVert. He includes, if you'll recall, that trade. So, let's talk about that. Last year, the Pacers had 31. They got it in a big trade with the Bucks, and then they traded 31 and Aaron Holiday to move up and get Isaiah Jackson. They have done this exact blueprint very, very recently. So it's not at all surprising to me to hear this from Fisher. And in fact, I think I even have said, something similar to what they did with the Holiday trade. Goga Batadze in 31 for like 25 or something like that. Makes a lot of sense. It's kind of been their MO that we've seen before. And the advantage of getting that first round pick is that contract structure. It's a locked in dollar amount. You get 2 team options instead of you can only negotiate 1 in if you sign a guy that you pick in the second round. And it's just a better player. You're picking higher. So there are a lot of benefits to moving up from 31 into the first round beyond just picking a higher player, but picking in the first round specifically. 30 and 31, they're only separated by 1 pick. The guy you're getting value, not that much different. The contractual value you get from getting 2 team option years is very, very important. And that's why there is value in that move up, and that's why it would take a lot. So what would the Cavs pick in 31 get you? What would 31 in Goga, for example, get you? It's hard to say, right? I would say last summer Aaron Holiday had a little more value league-wide than Goga does right now. So they got up to 22 by trading Aaron Holiday and that 31st pick. And the Wizards had wanted Aaron Holiday at times before that trade ultimately happened. So identifying a team that would want Bitadze and 31 that would also have a late first is kind of tough, right? Maybe San Antonio could be one. They're kind of a younger squad. So them scooping up an additional asset and getting another young player, maybe that makes some sense there. It's really hard, though. The other teams, Denver just traded for 30. It's unlikely they want to move back. The Warriors are probably trying to trade out of the first round to save some money. The Heat are a maybe, I suppose, at 27. But the Spurs seem like the one there. If you're going to trade Goga plus 31, I think getting 25 from San Antonio makes some sense. If you trade the Cavs pick instead of Goga, just spitballing value. First of all, one team that makes a lot of sense, ironically, if you trade the Cavs pick in 31, is the Cavs themselves at 14. That seems really high. If I'm Cleveland, I had to think really hard about that. But if the Cavs agree to trade, getting their own first-round pick back, then they are no longer bound by the Stepien rule, which says you can't trade your first-round pick 2 years in a row. So the Cavs, by trading 14 for 31 and their own first-round pick back, could get the 31st pick, could trade their 2023 first and their 2024 first. But without doing that trade, they could not trade their 2023 first or their 2024 first, and they're really hoping their lottery pick hits really hard. So that's not a bad idea for the Cavs, but in general, zoomed out, I don't think that the Cavs 2023 first that the Pacers have, as well as 31, gets you higher than maybe 2019 range for the Pacers, just in terms of what the value of those picks would be. Because it's lottery protected, the best the Cavs pick can possibly be is 15, and even then you're taking a risk because it's a year away and it's protected. So I would think that maybe 18 to 22, 23 maybe would be the range that I would think makes some sense if the Pacers try to package those picks to move up. But the Cavs specifically, because it would give them a lot of flexibility right as they're ascending, having that extra flexibility to make a big deal around Garland, Mobley, Allen, all those studs they already have, maybe that makes some sense for the Cavs in a way that doesn't have value for other teams. So I think there are deals to be made, and maybe they use all 3. Maybe it's Goga 31 and the next year's Cavs pick to get 14 this year. I don't know. There are ways for the Pacers to move up using those assets, and I think that reporting made sense to me. I liked seeing something like that because in the Pacers' shoes, those kind of creative deals to add more young talent, to get another first-round pick, to get your books really straightened out, makes a lot of sense. So seeing stuff like that, especially as a cap dork, was really intriguing to me, and I think that is smart use of assets by the Pacers, who, in very, very recent history, last season, used that 31st pick from other stuff to move up. It would not surprise me to see them do it again this year with those superfluous assets. They have a bunch of centers, so maybe Goga's viewed as extra. They don't necessarily need a bunch more young picks. They already have Halliburton, Duarte, Jackson, 6th pick, on their team, for example, adding a ton of young guys is really, really hard. Maybe they're okay with that, but given what we know of the Pacers franchise, I would say that that is unlikely to be the case. So that makes a lot of sense as a trade that the Pacers would pursue, and I liked seeing that reporting from Fisher just from my position of being, a team planning dork and thinking about all this stuff from a really zoomed out perspective. One more segment where I'm kind of going to talk about my big board, where there hasn't really any connections. Duarte, J. Michael with the Indy Star last summer, fantastic reporting he did. He got the he got the Chris Duarte Pacers connection in like May, way before the draft. And the draft was in July last year. So he killed it with that. Pacers worked him out and then picked him. There has not been as much of that sort of stuff this year. So I'll just go through my big board and talk about who does and doesn't make sense for the Pacers, who didn't work out. And so my ranking is not dependent on the Pacers, but I will say if guys do or don't make sense for the Pacers in the context of people love big boards, so I hope you guys do too. Before we get to that, though, before we rank some draft prospects, I got to talk to you guys about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models of vehicles, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the pointless and intimidating questioning from the guy behind the counter asking you about specs in your vehicle that you don't know? They don't carry the part that you need in their store, so they have to order it. Then you got to go back and get it, or it ships to your home. It takes a delay. It's a big pain. That sucks. Don't do that. You have a computer at home or your phone in your pocket with access to rockauto.com. You can save time and money. Just use that. Don't go to the dealership and waste a bunch of time. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are always reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need for your vehicle: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, new carpet, you name it. They got it. Go explore their easy-to-use website today. Find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On NBA Big Board. Hear the latest and greatest about the NBA draft from our local experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's talk about my big board. And let's specifically talk about how I decided to go about this. Because, look, some people rank this guy has the best floor. Some people have the best ceiling. Some people look at specific skills, fit in the league, whatever it could be. For me, looking at what the NBA is right now, a couple things stand out to me as drastically more important in terms of ranking than ever has been. IQ and feel, defensive versatility, and advantage shot creation. You can beat someone off the dribble. You can penetrate a defense. You can create a shot for your team. Advantage creation, to me, is the most important skill for a prospect to be a high-level guy. This guy can tear apart a defense at his level. If they combine that with either defensive versatility or high IQ, then they rocket up my board. Chet Holmgren, in his media availability today with NBA Media, basically said, you can stay on the floor for any... Someone asked him, Chet Holmgren, where do you feel like you'll fit the best of these teams that are picking high in this draft? He basically said, if you can knock down shots and create shots and play defense, you can fit on any team. And he's 100% right. He's absolutely right. That was paraphrasing. It wasn't an exact quote, but that is basically what he said. And he's exactly right. And so when I rank prospects, I use those skills as a guise of, sorting guys within tiers or moving guys up or down tiers. And there's some floor ceiling stuff, some of my own opinion, talking to people around the league. I have a lot that I put into it. But that is sort of the three skills that guide me into ranking these players. So I'm going to go through my board, I have 21 players ranked. Beyond those 21, I haven't watched anyone a ton enough to have a strong opinion of them. But let's do this. And I will say if I think they make sense for the Pacers, if the Pacers should have them lower or higher than I do as we go through this exercise. And I will talk about them in my tiered format. And my number one player on my big board is the only guy in my tier one, and that's Paolo Banchero from Duke. High IQ, advantage creator right now, should be defensive versatile. If I'm the Magic, I'm picking him easily. I think he fits any team, perfect size to play on the wing or at the 5, so he's got versatility there. Good enough on defense. Already really strong technical stuff in terms of footwork, and the advantage creation is huge for him. 6'10 creators are really hard to find, and there's one right there at the top of the draft. I think he's number one. I have him in a tier of his own. I think he's going to be the best player in this draft. If the Pacers somehow have a chance to draft Paolo Banchero, yeah, they should do it. I mean, he would fit their team perfectly. He would fit with Halliburton perfectly. Slam dunk number one pick on the Pacers board. I have two guys in my tier 2, and that is Jaden Ivey and Chet Holmgren. That's the order I have them in. Jaden Ivey is my second player in this draft. Holmgren is 3. Jaden Ivey revealing in a call with NBA Media earlier today that he has spoken with the Pacers via Zoom. Did not work out for the team. He only worked out for, I think he said, Detroit and Orlando. So the first pick and the 5th pick. Very interesting choices. Ivey is fully emblematic of that advantage creation skill I talked about. So quick with the ball, even quick off the ball. Good enough shooter to be a threat away from the play. And a nosy on-ball defender. Boom. Great prospect. Has a chance to be the best prospect in this draft. That's why if you listen to the Ultimate Mock Draft, I was willing to give up so much for him in the exercise where I'm pretend controlling the Pacers, because I think the Pacers getting a guy like that is so rare to have the chance to even draft a guy like that. With state ties via his mom playing for the Fever and coaching at Notre Dame, grew up here for a little bit, obviously went to Purdue. Makes a ton of sense. Chet Holmgren at 3, best defender in this draft to me. That defensive versatility is huge. I think he'll be a good enough shooter and good enough advantage creator. A lot of talent evaluators I've talked to have Chet number 1. Like, they think he's going to be the best player in this draft, and I totally get that. I have him 3. I would not belittle anyone for having him at number 1 or number 2. His defense is just ridiculous. His length is crazy, and the fact that he's able to knock down shots and handle the ball with that frame, with that skill set, is so impressive. And both these guys I think would be good fits on the Pacers. All the top 4 are good Pacers picks. My 3rd tier, I only have one guy here. The 4th guy, you can figure it out pretty easily. Jabari Smith from Auburn. I think his advantage creation is not as strong as the other top prospects in this draft. But if you are an athletic 3-and-D guy who's 6'10", your floor is so high, so high. He's kind of can't miss. Like, he's going to be a very good NBA player. He's been linked to number 1 to the Magic for months and months, or not months and months, for weeks and weeks now. Seems like it could be headed that way, although the buzz recently is it's not that much of a lock. We'll see. I still think it's a potentially likely scenario, but maybe not quite a lock. He'll be very good as a 3-and-D guy. His defense is awesome. The versatility's there. He belongs in the top 4, but he is 4th for me. Not having the advantage creation certainly hurts him here. Then after that, let's get a little crazy. And I only say let's get a little crazy because this is where the Pacers portion of the draft starts to me. Is at 5. A lot of people I've talked to in the league, my own evaluation of these players, and the Pacers workouts themselves kind of tip what I'm about to say. There's a big tier here. I have a tier from players 5 through 9 of Ben Mathurin. This is in order. Ben Mathurin, AJ Griffin, Dyson Daniels, Keegan Murray, Shaedon Sharpe. 5 through 9. That's a big tier. I also think that's a noteworthy tier because every single one of those guys worked out for the Pacers, right? The best names who worked out for the Pacers are the 5 guys I just said to you and Johnny Davis, right? There's a reason for that. The Pacers are trying to sort through that tier themselves. League talent evaluators are trying to sort through that tier themselves. Keegan Murray's workout was not public. Ben Mathurin's workout was solo and no media, right? AJ Griffin's workout was solo. You can gather some stuff from this stuff a little bit. I don't think that solo workouts matter that much, but they are something because those more in-demand players have different schedules and have to do these solo workouts sometimes, or sometimes they choose to do them. Anyway, I don't think the Pacers scheduling anyone for an individual workout means something. I do think a guy who has a lot of individual workouts means something. But that tier is big. And the reason I call this the Pacers portion of the draft is if you can't get into the top 4 as the Pacers, you have to think about trading back because this tier is big. You can get someone in the same tier a few picks later. Getting 6 and really 5, poor Detroit, is really tough this year unless you love someone. If you love Keegan Murray or you love Ben Mathurin, then fine, pick the guy. And I think that makes a lot of sense. If you love Dyson Daniels for his defensive versatility, pick the guy. But there's a lot of, because the tier is big, picking at the top of it is not necessarily the strongest part. But this is where the Pacers draft decisions start if the top 4 goes as expected, as is planned out now. And I have him ranked right now as Mathurin because I think he can create and play some defense. Griffin because he's going to be an amazing shooter and can create a little bit. His defense worries me a tiny bit. His injury history worries me a tiny bit. But in this tier, I think his offense is just brilliant. Dyson Daniels is the opposite of AJ Griffin. The defensive versatility reigns supreme. Keegan Murray, really solid player. Shaedon Sharpe, the wild card of the draft. I actually asked him to his face, do you think the mystery man label is fair? And he said, yes, I do. You guys haven't seen me play in over a year. I appreciated him being very honest with that answer. So that is my tier for the Pacers specifically. I mean, honestly, all those guys make sense, right? They all can play in an on or off ball setting. They can all play on the wing and defend spots that the Pacers need them to defend. AJ Griffin can shoot really well, which I think will mean something in a system like Rick Carlisle. Shaedon Sharpe may be the best individual creator of this group, which could mean something in this level, although his defense has a lot of question marks. His overall ability to play has a lot of question marks. Whereas Mathurin and Murray are a little more well-rounded player. So I think any of these guys would make sense to me. If the Pacers picked them, I would say, yep, okay, I get why they did that. They value this, this, and that. I rank them as Mathurin, Griffin, Daniels, Murray, Sharp, but I do not belittle anyone for swapping them around. At 10 in his own tier, I have Jalen Duren, best center in this draft, not named Chet Holmgren. To me, Pacers should not be interested in centers. I don't think they'll be interested in centers, but he is awesome. He is very good. There's a chance he looks like one of the 5 best players in this draft very quickly in his career. His offensive package is awesome. His mobility and his size are awesome. I think he can be defensive versatile and create a little bit of his own shot around the basket. He earned his own tier at 10 to me, but did not work out for the Pacers, which is noteworthy here. So that is, the gap from 9 to 10 in the tier list did work out for the Pacers. My 9th guy, Shaedon Sharpe, did not at 10. My next tier after that, Tari Eason at 11. I just recently moved Duren above Eason. If you listened to last week's podcast breaking down Tari Eason's game, I did say I had him 10th. I now have him 11. And he's in a tier for me with Johnny Davis, who did work out for the Pacers. Some people have Davis in that tier I said earlier of those 5 through 9 guys. He is talented, but I don't quite have him that high. He doesn't quite have the offensive advantage creation skills that some of those other guys have, despite being quite a good, versatile defender and a pretty high IQ player. 13, I have an own tier of Jeremy Sohan from Baylor. Defensive instincts off the charts, is going to easily slide into any NBA team's offensive skills. Do need some work, but Davis and Sohan and Eason and the next 2 guys on my board, basically any non-center and non-point guard, and there's not that many good point guards in this draft, are great fits with the Pacers. So cutting through all this is a little challenging. 14 and 15 are my sleepers, Jalen Williams and Blake Wesley. I talked about them on the guys who could have, in theory, fallen to the second round podcast from last week, because I saw some mocks that had them going in the second round. Spoiler alert, neither of those guys are going in the second round. They both got green room invites. So, they have both risen fast and are no longer going to be available in the range that I discussed. Jalen Williams is awesome. 7'2" wingspan, is a creating wing guard, is awesome. Blake Wesley, really good defending wing from Notre Dame. They're both in the same tier for me. 16 and 17, Dieng from overseas in the New Zealand Breakers, and Kendall Brown from Baylor. Guys who have some high-level skills. Brown's cutting. Dieng, look at his last 5 games. If you get a chance to look at his game log for the Breakers, they kind of tailored their offense to him. He went crazy for those 5 games. Really big scoring nights. Could be one of those advantage creation wings, although he is such a raw player that it's hard to say exactly what he could be. Kendall Brown, his pops, the way he's able to, guys who split double teams by going through them and cut really well. You can tell their feel is really high, and Kendall Brown's good at those things. His defense is solid. He moves quickly and well with the ball. I'm quite high on him as a wing who's kind of versatile on both ends of the floor, and I think that if he ends up going lottery, I think that would make sense to me, despite that not being out there anywhere. My next tier, Nikola Jovic and Mark Williams. I have Williams 18, Jovic 19. Williams, obviously the biggest dude ever. He's huge, but not the most skilled guy in Jovic. Good player from overseas, best overseas prospect in a weak overseas draft. And then my last tier of guys, I ranked Branham at 21 from Ohio State, and Jake LaRavia, who worked out for the Pacers on Monday from Wake Forest. 2 wings with some solid skills, and I think if either of them, if the Jake Fisher report about them trying to move into the first round again, if they're able to get to that 20 range and get one of those guys, that'd be a solid draft day of picking someone at 6 in there. Yell at me at my big board if you think it's stupid, either in the YouTube comments or at TEastNBA on Twitter. This podcast is at Locked On Pacers on Twitter if you have draft questions. We'll have guests the next 2 days. One day doing draft storylines, and then Thursday doing a draft preview. Obviously Friday and Saturday breaking down what happened in the draft and what it means. And if the Pacers make a move before or during the draft, I'll break it down right away on the show for you guys. Hope you're enjoying. If you have anything you think I need to cover about this draft, please let me know in any of the places I mentioned before. Have a great day. Great day. I hope everybody's really having a good time with this draft coming up soon, and we will see you tomorrow.